One of the very few fun storylines of the Orioles 2025 season was the emergence of Jeremiah Jackson. But will he even have a role on this team in 2026? We'll break that down coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, December 29th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we continue our Orioles Players Season Review series from the 2025 campaign and take a look at the short-ish season for Jeremiah Jackson, who was called up by the Orioles right after the trade deadline to make his major league debut and was pretty impressive in the 2 months he spent with the team. We'll talk about what went right, what went wrong for Jackson, and where he could find a role on the 2026 Orioles. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So we continue with our player review series. We're going kind of loosely in descending order of Fangraphs WAR that each of these players accrued for the Orioles in 2025. We jumped a little out of order because I wanted to talk about Kobe Mayo and Ryan Mountcastle and even Dylan Beavers, who I talked about on Friday's episode, just to, in case those guys, I'm sure, are right now in some trade talks. And if they get moved, want to get those episodes out there before that could potentially happen. But now we kind of go back into order with Jeremiah Jackson, 25-year-old right-handed hitting utility man who had a really nice first impression in the big leagues in 2025. Jackson, who the Orioles signed to a minor league deal last offseason. He began the year in Double-A Chesapeake after he had been a prospect with the Angels, didn't get above Double-A, was shipped over to the Mets, played 2 years over there in Double-A, and then became a free agent and signed with the Orioles. And I don't think anyone really thought much of it when he signed with the O's, but kind of here he is, right? So let's begin with what went right for Jeremiah Jackson, and that is that he made his major league debut. Again, former second-round pick by the Angels out of high school, bounced around the minors, came to the Orioles, and just kind of was really good in Double-A Chesapeake. Now, it was just a short stint of him being good. He actually, by the end of his 45 games, was pretty much a league average hitter, but he was 25. It was his third season in Double-A. He was a former top prospect. The Orioles needed infielders in Norfolk. I think they felt it was time, even though he wasn't lighting the world on fire, to call him up to AAA. And when he got to AAA, that is when he started to be dominant. In 40 games for the Norfolk Tides and 171 plate appearances, Jackson slashed .377, 400, 673 with 11 home runs. That was good for a 182 WRC plus with the Tides, meaning he was 82% better than a league average AAA hitter. That made Jeremiah Jackson, by WRC plus, the best hitter in all of AAA baseball this year among guys who had at least 150 plate appearances at that level. He was absurd. And now he was still sitting down in the minors because despite the struggles of the Orioles, they had enough infielders. And yes, Jordan Westberg was getting injured, but Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday were out there every day. You still had Ramon Arias, and you kind of had Jorge Mateo on this roster as well. It would have been hard to get him a lot of at-bats, but Ramon Arias was traded at the deadline along with Ramon Laureano and Ryan O'Hearn and Cedric Mullins, and there were openings on the active roster for an infielder. So Jeremiah Jackson was called up on July 31st to kind of replace some of these guys after the deadline. And all he did initially was hit. He was essentially an everyday player for the entire month of August for the Orioles right after the deadline. He had 96 plate appearances, and he was awesome. Hit .323, 44 slug. He had a 131 WRC plus. There was a really cool moment he had on August 13th. Came up as a pinch hitter and had a little league 2-run homer in the 7th to put the Orioles up 3-1 in that game. Still probably his biggest moment he's had in an Orioles uniform so far. But he was just red hot. I mean, The dude hit 370 in his first 18 big league games, jumped right onto the scene. And this is a guy who took advantage of his chances. Excuse me, that it wasn't just his first 18 games. It was the next 18 games after that Little League homer, my mistake, where he hit 370 with a 169 WRC plus. This is the definition of a young player, still 25 years old, getting a chance on a bad team who just traded away a lot of veteran hitters and making the most of his chance and basically said, look, I don't know what my future holds, but I'm going to be in this lineup every day for the rest of this season because I have kind of proven that I deserve it. And what else went right is that, some of the stuff did look good under the hood as well. He showed he can hit the ball hard. He had a 46.7% hard hit rate in the big leagues. That was third on the Orioles behind only Ryan Mountcastle and Gunnar Henderson. That included a 50% hard hit rate in that month of August when he first came up. And he was ready to just crush fastballs. A 59.2% hard hit rate against fastballs. That's equal to Kerry Carpenter of the Tigers' level of mashing fastballs. But he also did hit 347 against breaking balls. So he really came up and was ready for what pitchers were going to throw at him. And I think the thing that's kind of interesting with Jeremiah Jackson is where he did his damage in his short time in the major leagues is not where you see a lot of hitters doing their damage. Up and in was where Jeremiah Jackson just kind of feasted. And it's not a place where a lot of right-handed hitters do that kind of damage. Jackson had a 551 WOBA on pitches in the up and in quadrants of the strike zone. That was second best in all of Major League Baseball among guys with at least as much playing time as he had. Like Aaron Judge was fourth in that quadrant. He's a guy who does great up there, but not as good as Jeremiah Jackson. And again, among all hitters who had at least 150 plate appearances, he was second in slugging, 793, third in batting average, 483, and first in hard hit rate, 63% on pitches up and in. Again, it's just not a spot where guys usually do damage. And if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, I'm going to throw up the hot zones from Jackson in the big leagues this year. This is courtesy of StatCast and Baseball Savant. And again, it's not a chart you're used to. Now, again, there are a lot of hitters who are better on inside pitches than outside pitches. You see that a lot. But here is Jeremiah Jackson and the batting average from the quadrants of the zone. I mean, 500 up and in the strike zone, 538 on pitches that were actually out of the strike zone. If he would have not swung, they would have been called for balls up and in. And yet he hit 538 against those pitches. I don't truly know what to make of that, but there's clearly a hot zone for Jeremiah Jackson, and he is clearly taking advantage of that hot zone. And the other thing that I think went well for Jackson is not even with the bat. He got better at what was a semi-new position for him. Like Jackson was drafted as a shortstop at a high school with the Angels and came up through their system, mostly playing the infield. But in 2022, they got him a little bit of time in the outfield. They gave him 9 starts in left field in Double-A, and then he went over to the Mets and he started playing more outfield. He made 28 starts in the outfield in Double-A in 2023, including 14 of them in center field. Made 7 more starts in the outfield in Double-A in 2024. So it was certainly something that was in his tool belt, but he was still first and foremost an infielder. And when he came to the Orioles system, they said, look, we know you have the potential to be an outfielder, but we're putting you back in the infield. He played mostly shortstop in Chesapeake and in Norfolk when he was in the minor leagues with the Orioles. He made just 1 start in right field and 2 starts in left field in AAA Norfolk before the Orioles called him up. And yet he DH'd in his first big league game, and his second big league game at Wrigley Field, he started in right field for the Orioles. Not something he's done a whole lot of. And it showed immediately. He dropped a ball in right field, and I believe the first inning of that game that led to the only run that was scored in a 1-0 loss to the Cubs at Wrigley. But with Tyler O'Neill injured, Heston Kjerstad gone, Ramon Laureano traded, Ryan O'Hearn traded, there were at-bats to be had in right field. And, of course, Dylan Beavers wasn't in the big leagues yet. And the Orioles wanted Jeremiah Jackson to get at-bats. There were honestly more in right field than were available in the infield. And so that is where Jackson played. And yes, he looked really bad on that first chance, but he got better and better out in right field as the season goes on. He ended up playing 250 innings for the Orioles in right field versus just 84 at third base and 1 at second base in those 2 months. And his range wasn't great, but you could tell he was getting more and more comfortable out there with routes to the ball. His arm is a plus. It's 91st percentile arm strength. It's +2 on the arm value at StatCast. He was part of multiple relays from right field, throwing out runners at the plate in those final 2 months. I thought he showed that although it's not his natural position, he can absolutely hold his own. And honestly, I think could easily, with his age and athleticism, be a plus right fielder defensively with still the ability to play multiple places in the infield. Just gives him a lot of versatility. And when you hit and you show you can play a bunch of different positions without being a negative to your team, you show up at the very least as having an ability to be a really good utility guy. And that's kind of what the Orioles are looking for right now. But of course, it's not like he maintained that red hot stretch. Was he great in August? Absolutely. Did pitchers then start to figure him out? Yes, they did. So coming up next, we'll talk about what happened in September when the stats kind of started to go a little bit, at least a little bit, in the other direction for Jeremiah Jackson. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better because every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time are now appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. You open the FanDuel app and it brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So we'll continue to take a look at Jeremiah Jackson's 2025 season in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about the Everydayer Club here at Locked On Orioles. I just want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On now the #1 sports podcast network. Now, I know you already live the Orioles every day. It's your team every day. Now you can take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Orioles with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month, or, to save a little money, $50 per year. You can get in on this Locked On Orioles Discord where we're chatting about the O's, and you can get those episodes ad-free. So go to lockedonorioles.supercast.com or check the link down here in the show notes to learn more about joining the Everydayer Club. So Jeremiah Jackson, it was a good first stint in the big leagues overall. 48 games with the Orioles, 183 plate appearances. He hit .276 with .328 on base and a .447 slugging, 5 homers, 6% walk rate, 27% strikeout rate. It was good for a 117 WRC plus and a 0.8 WAR according to Fangraphs. And even though those stats are really, really good for a 25-year-old making his major league debut, it was red hot in August when he first came up, and then it did fall off a little bit. Let's talk about what went wrong for Jeremiah Jackson. His swing decisions are still quite concerning. You could tell that despite him being 25 years old, he was not a prospect who was drafted by the Orioles and has come through this system that works so much with swing decisions. He was with the Angels and with the Mets before being signed to a minor league deal by the O's last offseason. The biggest issue for Jackson in the Angels system was just the super high strikeout rates he was running. 33% in 2021, 29% in 23, 26% in 2024 while he was in the minors. And with Norfolk this year, despite the great stats, he was chasing 40% of the time out of the strike zone with the Tides. That would put him in the top 10 of highest chase rates in Major League Baseball. Now, you'll still find some good hitters with those higher chase rates because they have incredible bat control, and maybe that can be Jeremiah Jackson one day, but generally not a good sign. He was down to 34% in the big league, so a little bit better, but it's not an approach that generally works for hitters. You got to be a really special kind of hitter for that approach to make you really, really productive in the big leagues. And generally that approach doesn't age well. So it's something when you are 25, 26, 27 years old, you can get away with it and be a good hitter, but you will age faster as a hitter when you do chase a lot out of the strike zone. So it is something to be worried about. Now, you add it to a 33% swing and miss rate that Jackson had and some really low squared up rates. And, these are guys who, when they do chase, they generally have high squared up rates when they're good hitters because, okay, they're making a lot, they're swinging a lot out of the strike zone, but they're making the best kind of contact. They're making good contact when they swing out of the zone and still getting base hits. He wasn't really doing that. And as much as Jackson, as we talked about, can crush a pitch that's up and in, he does nothing with pitches down or pitches away. Again, if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you're going to see that same chart from Baseball Savant and StatCast, Jeremiah Jackson's batting average on pitches around quadrants of the strike zone. You can see inside, right? 500 up and in, over 470 in middle, well over 300 down and in. You go to away, he didn't have a single hit up and away. He hit just around 200 on pitches away and down. Even down middle, he didn't have a hit on this year. Jeremiah Jackson did not have a single extra base hit on a pitch that was on the outer third of the plate or further outside. That is a very, very clear. Again, this is a guy who had less than 200 big league plate appearances, so still a super small sample size. But if you're an opposing pitcher going in to face Jeremiah Jackson and the Orioles as this season, dragged into September last year, you have a clear plan of attack. It is nothing inside, everything down, and specifically down and away if you can do it. And that's what they started to do. There was a clear hole in his swing, and they attacked it. The plan was just away, and he's going to need to adjust if he wants to stay in the bigs. And the other thing with him in AAA when he was dominating is he was running a 4% walk rate, which isn't great. It went up to 6% in the big leagues, a little bit better, still not good, but it was also a 12% strikeout rate in AAA. While he was chasing a ton, he was making contact with all that stuff and was, even dinking and dunking balls into right field for base hits. Not only did that stop happening at times in the big leagues, he also doubled his strikeout percentage, more than doubled it. It went from 12% in AAA to over 27% in the big leagues. Now, there are still plenty of good hitters who run a 27% strikeout rate in the major leagues. But when you're running a rate that high, it just, again, and you're chasing as much as Jackson does, it becomes harder and harder to sustain being a good hitter. And all those things led to the fact that he did fizzle a bit down the stretch. Now, it was still a 102 WRC plus in the month of September. He was still basically a league average hitter in that final month, which was certainly worse than August, but still fine. I mean, it's honestly still good for a player making his major league debut. But it was that strikeout rate that kind of spiked. It spiked to 31% in September. That was kind of the old Angels minor league version of Jeremiah Jackson that we saw. The swing and miss went way up. The hard hit rate went way down in the month of September. There was actually a lot of good luck that just allowed him to be a league average hitter in that month. And we saw more of what I think the Angels and the Mets thought he would be if he ever got to the big leagues, which was why they let him walk without even advancing him as high as AAA in their minor league systems. So it's a big question with Jeremiah Jackson. He's still young. He's only going to be 26 next year. He's got some tools. He showed it. But who is the real hitter here? And, can he make this team? We'll talk about the biggest questions and storylines for Jeremiah Jackson heading into 2026. That's coming up next. So it was a nice breakout month of August and major league debut for the Orioles' Jeremiah Jackson when he was called up last season. But then, things started to go the other direction in September to finish the year. And now he's kind of in an interesting spot. He's 25 now. He'll be 26, I believe, actually. Is opening day March 26th? That is Jackson's birthday, I believe, or at least right around opening day, he'll turn 26 years old. So still very young, right-handed hitter. We've talked about, he can play the infield, and he looked pretty good out there in right field. I would trust him to play right field. He's got minor league options, which is helpful for his roster status. He is still on the 40-man roster as I record here on December 28th, and I expect him to stay that way heading to Sarasota and spring training in February. But let's talk about kind of biggest questions and biggest storylines for Jeremiah Jackson moving into next season. The first one for me would be just, can he make this team, right? Like right now on the Orioles, there is a utility role open, especially with Ramon Arias and Jorge Mateo no longer on this roster. Now, Both of those players are still currently free agents as I record, so it's not impossible one of them could be back with the Orioles. But if you're looking at just the players here right now on December 29th on the roster, I think Jeremiah Jackson would be one of the 13 hitters who makes the opening day roster. Now, I think there still could be some offensive additions to this team, and I think specifically, I think they could be looking at one final offensive addition being some sort of utility hitter, which would basically fully take away Jackson's spot on this roster. But right now, he's got a place. The other question is, can his offensive approach work long-term, right? Some guys are able to do it, even though they're chasing and whiffing a lot because they have special bat control and contact skills, even on pitches outside the zone. But a lot of guys flounder eventually because of that approach. They'll have hot stretches, which is absolutely what we saw from Jackson, both in AAA and the majors this year. But long-term, it will fizzle out. And that's what you worry about with Jeremiah Jackson. Now, luckily, you're not relying on him to be an everyday player. Even in the best case scenario for Jeremiah Jackson this year, he's not in there even most days for the Baltimore Orioles. Something would have to go very wrong for Jeremiah Jackson to, start 140 games for the 2026 Orioles. That's not the plan for him. It's, can you bottle up the skills that are in there? And when he does maybe start once or twice a week or come off the bench for this team, can he come through in those smaller samples and be a productive hitter when you need him to? And will that help him profile as a utility man? Because if you just look at what he's done in the majors and the minors, left field, center field, right field, third base, shortstop, second base, he's played all of them. Now, I don't think I would put him in center field, but I'd be fine putting him at third base, second base, or either corner outfield spot, and even at shortstop if you needed him to, because that's where he mostly played in the minors with the Orioles in 2025. And that is what you want out of a true utility guy. Now, he didn't, again, look amazing defensively at either third base or right field, which is where he mostly played with the O's. But I mentioned he got better and better at right field as the season went on. He's got the arm to play both positions. I think the big question is, do the Orioles fully trust him enough at either of those positions or the other ones I just listed? Again, he did play one inning at second, played a lot of shortstop in the minors this year as well, to be a true utility guy. The Orioles loved Ramon Urias in that role for years. And he was non-tendered by the Astros. He could be back. But this is us talking about replacing the Ramon Urias role. Two things Ramon Urias didn't do: play the outfield and run well. Jeremiah Jackson can play the outfield, and Jeremiah Jackson's got about average sprint speed, but that's much better than what Ramon Urias was putting out at this point. I don't think Jeremiah Jackson's going to steal a ton of bases, but he did steal 11 in the minor leagues this year. Heck, you go back a little bit, he stole 27 bases in the minors in 2023 with the Angels and the Mets. So it's a part of his game that's just never had been a part of Urias' game. Now, Urias, a more proven big league hitter who at his peak, certainly a better defensive player at the positions he could play in the infield than Jackson is, but that versatility and athleticism and potentially you could argue higher offensive ceiling that Jeremiah Jackson has than Ramon Urias, at least from what we saw this year, could make him an intriguing fit. And it'd be nice for the Orioles to have Jeremiah Jackson do what they tried to turn Jorge Mateo into. They tried to turn Mateo into a guy who could play the infield and the outfield. He couldn't play the outfield, y'all. It wasn't happening. It kept being put out there, and it was frustrating every time. On the flip side, Jeremiah Jackson got a whole lot better every time he went to the outfield. And I'm okay if that's part of his role, not as a starter, but more of a guy who's in the mix next year. So it would be weird, because the other part is, okay, let's say the Orioles don't go and upgrade, right? There's guys like a Willie Castro, for example, who's available in free agency. I think the O's would be interested in to be a utility guy. Say they don't upgrade it and Jeremiah Jackson makes this opening day roster as the utility guy. I guess the final question for him is, like, again, they're not going to trust him to play every day. They don't need him to be red hot all the time. Just get some hits when you're in there, face some lefties and really just be able to play multiple positions and have us feel comfortable. Not like you're a Gold Glover, but have us feel comfortable when you're out there playing those positions. I guess the real question is, like, how much would he really play if he was on this team? Like, if you have a healthy roster, your infield is set. Westberg is at third, Henderson at short, Holiday at second, Alonso at first. We know that. Your outfield is not set, and I still think there could be other moves made there, but it's going to be some sort of Taylor Ward in left, Colton Cowser in center, Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Beavers combination in right field. That's what we're looking at in the outfield right there. And then you also have Leody Taveras, at least at this point, probably making this roster as the backup center fielder. Now, can Jackson jump into the outfield mix? I mean, maybe, right? When we know Tyler O'Neill is going to spend time on the injured list, that's probably an opening for Jeremiah Jackson to play the outfield, especially if there's still questions about Heston Kjerstad's availability at this point next year, at least during next year's season. Could he platoon in the outfield at that point with Beavers? Maybe if O'Neill's out. I don't think he can really platoon with Cowser because I don't think you want him playing center field, although he's done it before in the minor leagues. Or I guess the bigger question is there a better chance that Jackson just begins the year in AAA? Again, he has 3 minor league option years remaining, so it's certainly a possibility that he could just be in Norfolk to begin the year and could be good depth for this team. Really, it's all just going to come down to, do the Orioles sign someone else? Because right now, even if they reconfigure the outfield, even if they deal a Beavers or find someone to take O'Neill's contract and bring in a better center field type, a lot of that switching is happening in the outfield. There's really not a lot of other people right now fitting in that utility infield type. I mean, you have, Peyton Eales and Luis Vasquez sitting in AAA right now, but neither of those guys are on the 40-man roster, whereas Jackson is. So if they don't make another utility type move, Jackson is the clear front runner to make this team in that role on opening day. It's just a question of, do they, again, sign a Willie Castro or an IKF type player and have him take the role, or is it going to be Jeremiah Jackson from the beginning and then we see where it goes? After that, well, then it's about, does he have enough playing time? Is he okay with just kind of being on the bench most games? And he should be, and he could help this team by doing that. And then when O'Neill is hurt, filling in, or we know Jordan Westburg is going to get knocked around probably at some point. That used to be Ramon Arias' job to play there for 3 weeks. Now maybe it'll be Jeremiah Jackson's job to go over to third base. It'll be nice to have one player who's able to fill those roles, right? Because when you had Tyler O'Neill and Jordan Westburg hurt at the same time last year, well, it's tough to cover that up. But when only one of them was out, Arias could go to third, but he couldn't help you when O'Neill was out. He couldn't go to right field. When you called up, when you had Ramon Laureano, that was great when O'Neill was out, but he couldn't go to third base when Westburg was out. Jackson can do either or, and that is a huge part of the versatility of being a utility guy. And that's why I think I'd be fine if they upgraded, but I'm not going to be upset if they don't upgrade at utility and Jeremiah Jackson is the guy to begin the season. There's a chance it tanks and the offensive profile is bad. In that case, you send him back to AAA, and it's not too hard to upgrade and go get another utility infielder. Heck, maybe Ramon Arias is gettable at that point. But from what he showed, I think I'd be good with him beginning the season in that role in the big leagues for the Orioles. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments here, what your thoughts are on Jeremiah Jackson, what he showed this year, and what he could bring to the Orioles in 2026. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers here on the channel. When we get there, we're going to do a fun giveaway here on the show only for YouTube subscribers. So make sure you subscribe so you can get in on that. Remember, my goal was by the new year to get to 10,000. We are so close. We got a couple of days remaining to do that giveaway. When I wake up on January 1st, we got to be to 10,000. So make sure, tell your friends to subscribe to the show. There's going to be something fun coming from that shelf behind me. Probably a bobblehead that's going to be given away on the show here. If you're an audio listener, absolutely appreciate it as well. Make sure to follow, subscribe to the show wherever you listen. If you can leave a 5-star rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that really helps us out. And if you want to just reach out to me, talk some ball, talk Orioles, ask some questions, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. And, listen, the holiday season, it's mostly past us. We are kind of, waiting for the new year to come up here. But maybe you still need a last-minute holiday gift for someone, or someone's asking what you want. You can make it the Everydayer Club. Add free episodes of the show, exclusive Locked On Orioles Discord server access, and more. You can gift subscriptions through the link at lockedonorioles.supercast.com, or check out that link in the show notes as well. I'm going to be back on Wednesday, unless we get some Orioles news between now and then. We'll talk about it and go live. If not, back on Wednesday, Paul Mancano from the Banner Baseball Show, who's been on the show multiple times. We're going to do a similar episode we did this time last year, an episode kind of drafting the most memorable moments for the Orioles from calendar year 2025. That's going to be a fun one back here on Wednesday for the final episode of 2025. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, Your team every day.